So, we finally have some clarity regarding the much-discussed tariff rebate checks that could provide support to millions of struggling Americans. Will we get tariff rebate checks? What the Trump administration says is now at the center of debate across Washington and among households waiting for relief. At the same time, it is impossible to ignore the economic strain families are experiencing. Wages still haven't caught up with inflation for years after the pandemic caused prices to soar and created a cost of living crisis for many households, a new study finds. The pandemic may have officially ended years ago, but the financial aftershocks continue. Rising grocery bills, climbing rents, and high energy costs have left many households living paycheck to paycheck. For these families, any new form of financial assistance could make the difference between staying afloat or falling deeper into debt. President Donald J. Trump and his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, have both stated that the economic situation they inherited was problematic. They blame the previous administration for leaving behind what they call a financial mess. Their message has been that fixing this will take time, but temporary support in the form of direct payments could soften the blow for households struggling to cope with ongoing inflation. Despite growing public interest, not everyone in government is aligned on this issue. United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that although Congress is currently weighing the possibility of sending the American people more money due to tariffs, those checks wouldn't be coming anytime soon. This means that even though lawmakers are drafting proposals, the Treasury is cautioning people not to expect immediate payouts. In other words, discussions are happening, but payments may not arrive as quickly as some are hoping. And Bessent went further. During an interview on CNBC's Squawk Box on Tuesday, Bessent said the revenue from import tariffs will first be put toward the U.S. national debt. That indicates a focus on long-term fiscal responsibility, paying down what America owes rather than delivering short-term stimulus. For struggling families, this raises concerns. While reducing debt may help stabilize the economy years down the road, it doesn't put money in their pockets today. The legislation from Josh Hawley, while Treasury signals caution, lawmakers are actively moving forward with proposals. Senator Josh Hawley introduced a bill that would create direct rebate checks tied to tariff revenues. His proposal calls for $600 for individual taxpayers, $600 for each dependent, $1,200 for married couples earning $150,000 or less. The structure resembles past stimulus packages, with clear income thresholds to target support toward middle-class and working-class households. What makes this moment unusual is that while the president himself has spoken positively about rebate checks, some members of his own party are pushing back. Several Republicans have criticized the legislation, despite Trump's support. Meanwhile, Democrats and a number of moderates across the aisle have voiced strong approval, pointing out that many families cannot afford to wait much longer for help. Is $600 enough? Experts and analysts are divided on whether $600 is meaningful. Critics argue that with inflation still chipping away at purchasing power, the proposed amount barely scratches the surface. Many are advocating for a larger check, between $1,400 and $2,000, to mirror what Americans received during the pandemic. The inflation numbers provide context for this argument. In July, inflation rose 2.7%, surpassing the entire 2024 yearly increase of 2.5%. To put it plainly, the cost of living increased more in a single month than it had across the entire prior year. That kind of surge puts enormous pressure on household budgets. The tariff inflation connection: one reason checks are being tied to tariffs is because tariffs themselves may drive costs higher. President Trump has pushed hard for reciprocal tariffs to protect U.S. industries and strengthen America's negotiating position in global trade. While this can bring in massive revenue, it also tends to increase consumer prices. Rebate checks are meant to offset that pressure. By redistributing tariff income back to households, the government could help balance out the inflationary effect tariffs cause. But the Treasury's preference to use tariff money for debt reduction creates a policy clash. Should the funds help everyday Americans now, or should they be used to chip away at long-term national debt? That's the dividing line at the heart of this debate. Political divide and public pressure politics are playing a major role in how this issue develops. Democrats largely see rebate checks as a chance to prove they are fighting for working families. Some Republicans, however, are resistant to direct cash programs, fearing that more government payouts could contribute to inflation or increase dependency. Public sentiment is leaning toward action. Millions of households are voicing frustration that their expenses keep rising while relief is constantly delayed. This pressure is forcing lawmakers to at least debate the matter seriously, regardless of ideological resistance. Eligibility rules. According to Hawley's legislation, individuals making $75,000 or less annually would qualify for the full $600. Married couples earning up to $150,000 would qualify for $1,200. Above those limits, the benefit phases out gradually, with a 5% reduction per income bracket. This design is intended to concentrate relief on middle and lower-income families. Wealthier households would either receive reduced checks or none at all. Analyst predictions economists remain split on the likely impact. Supporters believe rebate checks would provide immediate and targeted relief, helping households cover essentials like rent, gas, and groceries. Critics argue the effect may be too small to matter, or worse, that adding more money into circulation could stoke higher inflation. Another concern is timing. With tariffs projected to push prices even higher in the next 3 to 4 months, some fear the checks will arrive too late to prevent additional hardship. This is not the first time Americans have heard promises of unusual payments. You might remember the much-publicized idea of a $5,000 DOGE stimulus check. That proposal, however, never had actual legislation behind it. It was mostly a political headline. The difference this time is significant. Tariff rebate checks are backed by formal legislation introduced in Congress, with real lawmakers debating the details. That makes the possibility of payouts far more realistic. Looking ahead, the future of tariff rebate checks ultimately depends on how quickly Congress can act and whether President Trump decides to fully endorse the plan. If bipartisan support continues to build, checks could potentially arrive within the next couple of months. If internal divisions stall progress, Americans may face yet another round of delays. What is certain is that households across the nation are demanding answers. With inflation still eroding incomes, the pressure to deliver relief is only going to intensify. Conclusion: to sum it all up, the debate over tariff rebate checks is about more than just policy. It's about whether Americans will see tangible relief in their bank accounts soon. On one side, the Treasury is focused on debt reduction. On the other side, lawmakers like Josh Hawley are pushing to get direct payments out to families. United States Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that although Congress is currently weighing the possibility of sending the American people more money due to tariffs, those checks wouldn't be coming anytime soon. And at the same time, during an interview on CNBC's Squawk Box on Tuesday, Bessent said the revenue from import tariffs will first be put toward the U.S. national debt. Those statements highlight the uncertainty ahead. But unlike past empty proposals, this time legislation is on the table. That makes tariff rebate checks a real possibility, even if the amount and timing remain in question. For millions of Americans still struggling, the hope is that this relief becomes more than just political talk and turns into actual dollars delivered soon.